First of all, thank you to the panel. I mean, that was actually quite a buzzy panel. So, and that's always good because you don't want just the same old message all the time. So thank you to the panel. Thank you to everybody. And it's not just the room, it's much wider than the room as well. Particular thanks to the Construction Innovation Hub. I mean, I think they took on a pretty thankless task, actually, 4 years ago, because they had a bit of a brief, but it was, and I helped write the brief as well, but it didn't have a lot of direction to it, if I'm honest. And the fact that we've come from a few ideas to something that is actually now, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. So thank you to everybody that's been involved. And of course, all the organisations, particularly those that took part in the trials, because that was hugely time-consuming for lots and lots of people, and yet everybody did it really willingly and, of course, gave their feedback. And so this has been, not only has it been a gargantuan effort, but in my view, it's been a spectacular example of collaboration at its very best, its absolute very best. So well done, everyone. Now, it's interesting because lots of dates have been bandied around. I can trump Tim. I've been in the industry over 40 years now. But I actually started on this particular journey back in April 2016 when I was interviewed by a guy called Andrew Wolstenholme, who was at the time the chair of the Construction Leadership Council. And just to give you some context here, this was before the Grenfell tragedy. It was before Carillion collapsed. It was before the Brexit vote. It was before the global pandemic. It was before the war in Ukraine and our 40-year sort of inflation high. And it was before the Glasgow COP. And I would say that each one of those has simply gone on to emphasise the fact that something needed to change. And the task that I was set by Andrew back in 2016 was to build on a piece of work that had been done by Mark Farmer. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. He wrote a report called Modernise or Die. And what Andrew asked me to do was to look at the way that industry performs and to make recommendations on how procurement, and at the outset this was about procurement, could be used to improve whole life performance of assets. So, I mean, this was this big. And the thing that I will never forget about that conversation with Andrew is he said, and we want somebody who's prepared to do some heavy lifting. Now, to be absolutely honest, if I'd realised quite how heavy some of that lifting was going to be, I might not have done it. But anyway, I like a challenge. I rise to a challenge. So the first couple of years, I and it wasn't just me, there was a whole group of industry people worked on this, and particularly from the professional institutions and the Construction Industry Council. And we did a lot of research with clients and with industry suppliers, consultants, contractors, subcontractors, etc. And we found some really striking findings. I would say that the most striking one was the massive lack of alignment within the industry itself. Now, I think all of us know this, and we all work in our little sort of spheres. But the cause of this lack of alignment was actually, it wasn't malicious, it was a lack of understanding, because we all just operate in our own little bit. But unfortunately, what this lack of alignment and lack of understanding led to was a massive lack of trust. And I think that all of us have probably seen examples of that. And again, people not being mischievous, but they just don't understand why or how things are being done. And what we also found was that tendered capital cost, so, ultimately the price in the bottom right-hand corner on the invitation to tender, had become a proxy for value. And yet, we also found that the majority of clients and the vast majority of consultants and constructors knew that this wasn't true. So we were sort of living in this mythical world where we were just promoting something that we all knew wasn't true, but we didn't really know what to do about it. And to be fair, we also found some fabulous examples of clients that weren't doing this. And the work that I started, myself back in 2016 builds probably on 40 years of work before that as well. And I do need to acknowledge that. But effectively, what seemed to have happened was that although people knew things could be better, they didn't know how to change. And they didn't have the time to change, and they didn't have the headspace to make those changes. And so in the sort of report that I produced at the end of that, the Procuring for Value report as it became known, although I actually wanted it originally to be called the Alignment of Vested Interests, but it was felt that that wasn't sort of but actually I still believe that, because if we are all aligned, then actually you make progress. But anyway, Procuring for Value made a number of recommendations, and that was effectively that to improve value, we had to have a consistent framework. We had to be able to define value, we had to be able to measure value, and not just at the point of procurement. What we very, very quickly realised is that this had to be right from the very beginning. This had to be from the business case right through to operation. This wasn't anything, I mean, it was something to do with procurement, but procurement was actually just a small part of this process. And so we made these recommendations, and we were really fortunate, I guess, that these recommendations got carried forward into the Transforming Construction Challenge Fund. And that, I guess, was, in terms of the Value Toolkit, that was the game changer, because it actually meant we had some proper funding and support to actually start developing the ideas. And so in the construction industry sector deal, which, again, this is a way back now, it's 4 years ago, you might recall that this was very much a partnership between government and industry. It wasn't, you know, we'll do this and you do that. It was actually, what can we do together? And there were some key undertakings in in the sector deal. The undertaking from industry was that we, because I'm part of industry, would improve the lifetime performance of buildings through better procurement. We would develop an industry-wide definition of value, which takes into account more than capital cost, and we would produce a universal, we were pretty ambitious then, produce a universally applicable methodology for procurement and promote common and consistent standards across the industry. And what government sort of agreed to do was to embed this procure for value approach, and through public sector procurement. And if I go down this list now and sort of get my pen out and tick them off, well, we've got the flex standard, so we've got the consistent methodology, we've got the toolkit, so we've actually got the framework that supports that methodology. And actually, within all of the training and the guidance, we can definitely have something that can be used universally. It's not sector specific, it's not subsector specific, so it's not specific to housing or infrastructure or anything else. It cuts right across the construction sector. So, you know, and obviously the ongoing support in terms of the policy framework, the IPA support and the support of various government departments, I think we get a tick on the embed side as well. And clearly the most important part in that, from our point of view, was the fact that it is specifically referenced in the construction playbook. So this isn't just something that's sort of floating around in the ether. This is something where you can actually see, as I think many speakers have already said, that, you know, policy and implementation are actually coming together to take it forward, if you like. So so the Value Toolkit was conceived, if you like, 4 years ago. It's a hell of a gestation period, but anyway. I had one condition in terms of my continued involvement with this, because, you know, I'd been involved for a while by then, and that was that I wasn't prepared to write another report. What we had to produce was that something that was practical, something that was useful, something that actually helped people in their day jobs, not something that helped or interested an elite group of people that like reading reports. And there are a group of those, you know, of which I'm probably part of. And so it was really, this has to help, it has to move us forward, it has to give busy people a way of actually doing something that saves them time, saves them effort, and actually produces a better result as well. And so that was one of the key sort of aspirations, and that is why it's called the toolkit, because it couldn't be the value report. And so, you know, what the team has produced, and credit where credit's due, there are so many people that have been involved in this. I think it is a game changer, and I don't use those words lightly either. And I think it's a game changer for everyone in the sector. It's not just for elite groups. It's so much bigger now than procurement. It's about understanding what's important for a client and for the stakeholders, because of course they're not always the same importance. It's not always the same. It's about considering options. It's about designing good solutions. It's about making trade-offs. And one of the things that all of us who work in any part of construction know, that unless you've got unlimited funds and unlimited time, then there will actually always be trade-offs. And it's actually recognising these trade-offs and making the right decisions. It's about finding the optimal solution, not the perfect solution, but the optimal solution. And it's actually about appointing the most appropriate organisations to deliver that solution. So whether that's your contractors or your consultants or your specialist subcontractors, for goodness sake, rubbish in, rubbish out. This is about getting the right people to do the right work in the right cost in the right time frame. So effectively, what this will do, and I have a confidence that it will do it, it gives us the ability to move away from the race to the bottom. It allows us to define value in terms of whole life cost, in terms of performance, in terms of environmental impact, in terms of social impact, in terms of human impact. It gives us a much broader canvas for value. Now, of course, value means different things to different clients. Nowhere in the value toolkit do we say value means this. We say this is the framework, and you as the client, as the stakeholders, etc., you define what your value is. But once you've defined it, we then have a consistency that we can take forward. And so once we understand value, we can make value-based decisions, and we can collect the supporting evidence to actually demonstrate whether or not those decisions paid off, indeed whether those decisions have even been delivered. So, this was a massive ambition when we set out on this journey. But to be honest, I think that ambition is to a great extent fulfilled as far as we have come. But the ambition must continue. And so what the ambition now is for widespread adoption. The last thing I want to sort of see is all the accolades, well done everybody, and then, move on and what's the next thing. So we want widespread adoption by clients underpinned by the industry. And it has to be this partnership. It can't just be one-sided. It doesn't work if it's one-sided. But we are already gathering momentum. We're gathering huge momentum. The alignment with the construction playbook, the alignment with the Green Book, the adoption already by, the trial projects through many government and indeed non-government departments. And so our ask of the audience tonight, and as people have said, we are to some extent talking to the converted. But the ask tonight is one, that you are all advocates and, you continue with this message, because if we, each of us talks to 20 people and they talk to 20 people, it doesn't actually take that long to talk to the 3 million people in the construction industry. We want you to be users. So more than advocates, we actually want you to download it, to start trialing it, to actually, we heard from BSI, it's free, the Flex standard. All of the literature and the supporting guidance will be available on the website, so we're not even asking you to buy it, we're just asking you to use it. And we're also asking you to shape the future of it as well, in terms of feedback specifically on the Flex standard, which is out for public consultation, but more than that, feedback on the toolkit itself. Does it work for your clients? Are there things that we can improve, etc., etc.? And our promise, if you like, on behalf of the entire team that have been involved, is that we will continue to work with government, with industry, to secure the legacy of the Value Toolkit, to make sure that it does have a future. And that question, what will it be in 5 years' time? Well, it'll just be that thing that everybody uses. I mean, that's really what I would like to see. So, spread the word. All of you hopefully have got a badge that's got a QR code on it. And if you actually scan that, it'll take you to a link with everything you need in order to promote the Value Toolkit. So, there's no excuses. So long as you've got a phone that can read this, or you work with somebody who's got a phone that can read this, then you won't have a problem. On that note, just again, thank you very much, everybody, and good luck with the next stage of the implementation.